This video contains spoilers. Don't say I didn't warn you. Alright, let's see what we can review this time. Let's try something new that I haven't played yet.
Surprise!
Wait, hold up. No. No way. No freaking way. Oh, this can't. No. Yes. Oh my god. Welcome to Castlevania, Curse of the... dude, it's not Castlevania. What? Oh, right. Welcome to Bloodstained, Dracula's Curse. Hey, idiot! I just told you it's not Castlevania. Oh my god, fine. Welcome to Bloodstained, Curse of the Moon, a story about a trenchcoat wearing edgelord who studied the blade just to
Destroy the moon!
Well, technically he wants to destroy all demons that just so happen to have an affinity with the moon, but that's beside the point. The point is that it's just fluff for the awesome classic action platformer gameplay reminiscent of the NES Castlevania games. Yeah! Take that, Lamp!
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side! Wait,
Specifically Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, as you'll often find that both visual and gameplay elements within Bloodstained are heavily inspired by that game. Oh my god, why is this so slow? And thanks to modern tech and game design practices being refined over the past few decades, Bloodstained takes those elements, improves upon them, and combines them with a beautiful 8-bit pixel art style to create something that is sure to satisfy those with even the rosiest of tinted glasses.
Sup, bitches?
Actually, this dude doesn't have a whip, so this is nothing like Castlevania.
Wrong. Even if you don't start the game with a whip, the combat mechanics of Bloodstained are quite similar to the classic Castlevania games, and after you beat the first boss, you get the opportunity to recruit Miriam, one of the 4 playable characters who does have a whip.
Whip-a-good!
That is assuming, of course, you don't just ignore her, or,
You steal men's souls!
assuming you're not some sort of genocidal maniac, you can also recruit Alfred, a squishy old wizard,
Ooh, you better believe that's a pennon.
and Gebel, who can turn into a bat and is totally not Dracula.
How about you?
Each of them, along with Zangetsu and Miriam, bring something unique to the table when it comes to combat and exploration. Certain paths are only accessible by certain characters, so if you have them in your party, make sure you keep them alive so you can access those paths, as they're usually shortcuts. And to complement most of the characters' playstyles, there's a variety of secondary weapons at your disposal that you can pick up from the blue lamps located across all of the levels that you'll explore. Each of them have their own unique uses and traits that can be exploited to handle enemies as efficiently as possible.
That is absolutely good!
The best part about this is that you can combine some of your sub-weapons across characters, so be sure to experiment with your arsenal and find out what works best for you.
Bye, have a beautiful time!
Because that's a bit of a necessity if you want to mop the floor with the bosses that you fight at the end of every stage.
Die, monster!
But Toric, what does this have to do with Curse of the Moon 2?
An excellent question, my friend. Curse of the Moon 2 takes everything about the original and cranks it up to 11. Holy crap, you can finish off the bosses now? That's so freaking awesome! Good lord, how many enemies do I have to deal with? Bosses spawn ads now? I'm not playing an MMO. Look at all these platforming challenges. Is that a mecha suit? Who's piloting it? It's a dog! Alright, but seriously though, Curse of the Moon 2 really does improve on a good majority of what its predecessor tried to accomplish. Bosses are harder, enemies are placed much more deliberately than before to stop your forward momentum, and the platforming aspect of Bloodstained is also much more challenging. with moving platforms, pitfalls, and spikes used more as actual threats and less as novelties.
Oh man, there's a lava part in this thing. Those are hard.
And while the challenges may be simple at first, the fact that you also have to deal with demonic occupational hazards at the same time means that you're in for some frustration if you're not careful enough. Oh, Fortunately, you often come across baddies within a safe enough distance to make you stop and think about how you should approach the situation, although there may be times where you can just trudge on through if you have the weapon points for it.
Yeah! I have the power of God!
One thing I love about Curse of the Moon 2 is how the first few bosses you come across are able to be slain by you, the player. Granted, you can only do that after your first playthrough, more on that later, but it's still a great way to introduce the mechanic, as well as the new character trio that you befriend along the way.
That was too easy, mate.
Meet Dominique.
Dominique? Yo, that sounds like such a stripper name.
Yo, go away! I'm trying to make a video here. God, some people. Dominique is a spear-wielding member of the church and is able to cast a number of spells, similar to Alfred. But if you ask me, the most important spell of all that she can cast is... Magic seed that rapidly grows into a plant that dispenses health to keep you from dying.
Tasty.
She can also use her spear to attack enemies from underneath, as well as Goomba stomp them in a couple of choice objects to reach the occasional shortcut. There's also Robert, one of Zangetsu's war buddies who hates both the demons and the church. He's what you might call the sniper of the group.
Gotcha, you bomb-lobbing wanker!
And what he lacks in durability and speed is made up for in range and powerful sub-weapons, which are quite lethal in the right hands. And he can also wall jump and go prone, two abilities which are more useful than you might initially imagine.
I'm running out of places to put holes in you.
Finally, there's Hachi, a corgi that somehow possesses the know-how to pilot a steampunk mecha. He can punch, stomp, hover, and completely ignore a decent amount of floor hazards. Oh, and he can clear out floor spikes too, which is super useful. Oh, and did I mention that he can stay invincible for as long as you have weapon points? Yeah, Hachi's, he's kinda overpowered if you ask me. But I don't care, he's my favorite! Who's a good little murder pup? Who's a good little OP murder pup? Together, they set out to stop the demons from plaguing the land. Except they don't. And then they kidnap Dominique because madamsel in distress.
Dominique sacrificed herself, you fool!
And then Zangetsu, Robert, and Hachi go through all of the stages again just to save Dominique. And they do. Or not. What the hell gives? Okay, so remember when I mentioned that you would have a first playthrough? Well, both Curse of the Moon games have multiple endings that require you to do certain things to get certain endings. With the first game, it depended on whether you recruited, spared, or acted like a jerk towards the characters that you came across. And depending on what your actions were, you could replay through the levels with the characters that tagged along with you. Or you could just YOLO through the game with the souped up Zangetsu with abilities that you obtained by being a generally awful person. And that's great, I really like that. But there was a caveat to this, and that was that you practically go through the same levels with little to no deviation. It's only through the friendship playthrough that you actually get one new stage. Just one. That's it. They do try to alleviate this in the sequel by adding more branching paths depending on which playthrough you're on, or episode as the game calls it. Again, that's great, until you realize that you basically play through every level at least twice in order to get every upgrade in the final episode. And that means having to go through all those same routes again. Not to mention that you only start with Zangetsu in the beginning of the final episode because for some reason, all the other characters are scattered across the entire frickin' map. You don't even come across the other characters midway through the level, they're still right there at the frickin' entrance.
What the hell is even that?
Instead of sticking together to complete Alfred's stupid fetch quest,
How does that make sense?
this wouldn't be so bad if some of the bosses weren't so annoying to deal with when you're not basically cheesing with Hachi on your second playthrough onwards. The sarcophagus boss is an especially egregious example of... Oh my god, what? That is, of course, until you get to use Alfred's Volt Rays, which basically just shreds everything before you even realize that the fight is already over. Oh yeah, did I mention that the original gang comes back in the sequel? I, probably should have mentioned that. In Curse of the Moon 1, you almost always had to wait your turn and actually study the boss's pattern to determine when the right time to strike would be. This is why I love the final boss on the friendship route. It took almost everything I learned about every character and turned it all on its head to create a heart-pumping boss battle that I won't forget any time in the near future.
Yes, fight me!
In Curse of the Moon 2, there's only like 2 bosses where you actually have to wait your turn. That is, of course, if you can't just press Hachi to win. And look, I get it. Why don't you just get good? Well, look, the point is that I shouldn't feel forced to use invincibility just to get through a boss. That's just poor design. And now that I'm done beating up the straw man over here, I just have one more peeve, and that's you don't even get to unlock Zangetsu's full potential until after you beat the final episode. From the middle of episode 1 through episode 2, Zangetsu gets a combo, an improved aerial attack, and better versions of his sub-weapons. But you can kiss all of that goodbye regardless of whether or not you get the good ending in episode 2, until after you beat the final episode. Which honestly makes completely zero sense to me. They should have just given you all of the upgrades from the get-go. Or at least unlock his full potential in the final episode. But nope, you just get stuck with this piddly little poke. Which is a shame because Zangetsu feels pretty useless compared to the other characters otherwise. And I know I'm picking on Zangetsu here, but compared to the other characters in both of these games, I feel the least connected with him because of how often I rely on everyone else by comparison. And that's likely not something that the devs intended considering the fact that he's meant to be the main protagonist. In the sequel, there are these little intermissions between every stage where you get to watch the characters interact with each other, and you get to watch them display tidbits of their personality that, despite any actual dialogue going on between them, display signs of development over time. For instance, Robert shows a rather intense dislike for both Dominique and Hachi, but over time you can see how he bonds with Hachi, and it's just the most precious thing ever.
That's the cutest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
And you can see something similar happen with Zangetsu across every playthrough. But the reason why I connected with every other character besides him was because there hardly ever felt like there was a time where I truly needed him, which meant that I couldn't bond with him as a character. And it sucks because he does actually show character development. He does grow as a person despite the minimal amount of storytelling in comparison to the gameplay, but if I'm not given any sort of reason to rely on him, then I, as the player, can't bond with Zangetsu, the player avatar. Those points aside, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 1 and 2 feel pretty damn good. There are a few other things in this review that I neglected to mention, but I don't want to spoil the games any more than I already have. And honestly, I'd rather you check out both of these games and see what they have to offer for yourself, because your experience may be wildly different than mine, and if it is, let me know down in the comments below what you thought about them. I'd love to see what your take on these games is. And for those of you who've yet to play them, here's my verdict. They're good. Go play them. Despite my apparent frustrations, they're still well-crafted games that really capture the feeling of nostalgia. Assuming, of course, that you grew up playing these types of games. And even if you didn't, I still highly recommend playing them as they're still quite challenging, but fun. And they have a hidden message about perseverance and unity in the face of adversity. Assuming that's your kind of thing. I don't know, it's not for me. Maybe. Just play it. Just play. Do. Hey guys, it's Toric here. If you made it all the way through the video, then I just want to say thank you. I'm still trying to figure out the format for these videos, so if you have any feedback, then, let me know down in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked the video, leave a dislike if you didn't. I'm more than happy to hear your feedback. If you want to see more, then, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell for future videos and all that. So, yeah, thanks. Thanks again. I'll see you in the next one.